You're holding something worth more than you probably realize. Inside the device you're holding right now, hidden between layers of glass, metal, and microscopic circuits, is real gold. Not gold-colored metal, not an imitation, actual gold. The same element humans first encountered roughly 9,000 years ago. But here's the incredible part. The first person to find it had absolutely no idea what they were looking at. No science, no chemistry, no periodic table, not even a word for gold. They were probably standing barefoot in a river, searching for food, when something strange caught their eye beneath the water. It looked like a stone, but it wasn't a stone. And the moment they picked it up, humanity's relationship with one of Earth's strangest materials had begun. So the question is simple. In a world with no chemistry, no mining, no science, and no reason to care about a soft metal you can't eat, can't use as a weapon, and can't build a shelter with, how did ancient humans discover gold? And more strangely, why did they decide it mattered? Let's start with the moment itself, because it's weirder than you think. Gold doesn't behave like other metals. Copper hides in green-streaked rock. Iron is locked inside rust-red ore. Tin, lead, silver, they all require you to do something to the earth before they reveal themselves. You have to smelt, roast, crush. But gold? Gold just sits there, naked, gleaming, right on the surface of riverbeds and exposed rock faces, looking exactly like what it is. Geologists call these placer deposits. Essentially, gold that's been weathered out of mountain rock by millions of years of rain and gravity and carried downstream until it settles in sediment. And because gold is absurdly dense, 19 times heavier than water, almost twice as heavy as lead, it sinks to the bottom of every stream it enters and stays there, accumulating in cracks and bends where the current slows down. Your ancestors didn't find gold because they were looking for it. They found it because it was impossible to miss. Picture a Neolithic human kneeling at a stream in what's now Varna, Bulgaria, scooping up wet gravel to wash food or fill an animal skin pouch. Among the dull browns and grays, there's a fleck of something that catches the afternoon sun like a tiny trapped flame. You pick it up. It doesn't crumble like sandstone, it doesn't flake like mica, it's heavy in your palm, heavier than anything that small should be. And when you press your thumbnail into it, it gives, it bends, it yields to you in a way that no rock, no bone, no wood ever has. That last detail is the one that changed everything. Here's what nobody tells you about gold's early discovery. It wasn't the color that captivated people, it was the softness. In a world made entirely of hard, brittle, unyielding materials, gold was the first thing a human being could shape with nothing but their hands. You didn't need fire. You didn't need tools. You could hammer it with a river stone, fold it, flatten it into a sheet thinner than a leaf. Around 6500 BCE, someone in the region near modern-day Bulgaria figured this out, and the results were staggering. The Varna Necropolis, excavated in 1972 by archaeologist Ivan Ivanov, contained graves dating to roughly 4560 BCE filled with over 3,000 gold artifacts, bracelets, rings, chest plates, even a gold-sheathed axe. These are the oldest worked gold objects ever found on Earth. And the people who made them had no forges, no anvils, no metallurgical knowledge whatsoever. They had patience and the strange, almost supernatural malleability of a metal that seems designed to be touched. Think about that for a second. The very first worked metal in human civilization wasn't bronze, it wasn't iron, it wasn't copper, it was gold. We shaped beauty before we shaped utility. But here's where the story gets deeper, because finding gold is one thing. Deciding it's valuable is something else entirely, and the logic behind that decision is far less obvious than you'd expect. Gold is, objectively, one of the most useless materials in the ancient world. You can't make a blade from it, it's too soft, barely a 2.5 on the Mohs hardness scale, which means your fingernail is almost as hard. You can't build with it, you can't eat it. A gold arrowhead would crumple on impact like tinfoil. So why did your ancestors look at this soft, heavy, functionally pointless metal and collectively decide it was the most precious substance on the planet? The answer lives in chemistry, and your ancestors understood it intuitively even though they couldn't have named it. Gold doesn't tarnish, it doesn't rust, it doesn't corrode, turn green, flake apart, or dissolve in water. You can bury a gold ring in wet soil for 5,000 years, dig it up, and it looks exactly the same as the day it was buried. In a world where everything, your food, your tools, your clothing, your shelter, your own body, decays, rots, breaks, and eventually returns to dust, gold is the one thing that simply refuses to change. Chemists today know this is because gold is extraordinarily non-reactive. Its electron configuration makes it almost impossible for other elements to bond with it. It laughs at oxygen, it ignores sulfur, even most acids can't touch it. Only aqua regia, a vicious mixture of hydrochloric and nitric acid that wouldn't be formulated until the 8th century CE, can dissolve gold reliably. Your ancestors didn't know any of this, but they watched copper tools turn green. They watched iron crumble to orange dust. They watched silver blacken in the air. And then they looked at gold, and gold looked exactly the same as it did the day they found it. In a world defined by impermanence, gold was permanent, and that made it sacred. Here's the part nobody talks about. The leap from "this is a pretty rock" to "this is divine" happened faster than you'd think, and it happened independently in civilizations that had zero contact with each other. In ancient Egypt, gold was called Nebu, and it was considered the flesh of the gods, specifically the flesh of Ra, the sun god, because gold looked like solidified sunlight. The oldest known geological map in the world, the Turin Papyrus, drawn around 1150 BCE, is literally a gold mine map, a treasure map showing the location of deposits in the eastern desert along the Wadi Hammamat. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the Chavin civilization in Peru was working gold by 1200 BCE with no possible knowledge of Egyptian practices. In what's now the country of Georgia, the Colchian people were pulling gold dust from rivers using sheepskins as filters, a technique so famous it likely inspired the Greek legend of the Golden Fleece. Different continents, different millennia, different languages, different gods. Same conclusion. Gold is special. Gold is forever. Gold is power. The convergence is almost eerie. It suggests that gold's grip on the human mind isn't cultural. It's something deeper, something wired into the way we process the world. And that wiring has roots that go back long before civilization. Neuroscientist Yosef Parvizi at Stanford has studied how the human visual cortex responds to shimmer and luster, the specific optical properties that make gold look like gold. Highly reflective, warm spectrum surfaces trigger heightened activity in the ventral visual stream, the part of your brain that evaluates objects for significance. In plain language, your brain is built to notice things that glow. It's the same instinct that draws your eyes to firelight, to ripe fruit, to sunlit water. Gold hijacks a visual reward system that evolved millions of years before metal existed. Your ancestors didn't choose to find gold captivating. Their neurons chose for them. But noticing gold and obtaining gold are very different problems, and as demand grew, your ancestors had to get creative in ways that border on genius. The earliest method was simple: wade into a river, pick up nuggets, collect flakes. But surface gold runs out fast. Within a few centuries, people in Egypt and Nubia had developed alluvial mining, which meant systematically washing enormous quantities of river sediment through channels and sluices to separate out the heavy gold particles. The Greek historian Diodorus Siculus, writing around 60 BCE, described Egyptian gold mines in horrifying detail. Vast underground tunnels, carved by enslaved laborers, some of them children, working in shafts so narrow they had to crawl on their stomachs in total darkness, passing baskets of ore hand over hand to the surface. The gold in Tutankhamun's death mask, that serene and radiant face now behind glass in Cairo, was pulled from the earth by human beings who never saw sunlight for months at a time. Every golden artifact in every museum you've ever visited carries that invisible weight. Here's what doesn't make sense until you think about it. The difficulty of getting gold didn't reduce its value, it amplified it. Economists call this the scarcity principle, but your ancestors felt it as something more primal. The fact that gold demanded suffering made it feel more real, more worthy, more divine. The Inca called gold the sweat of the sun. The Aztecs called it Teocuitlatl, literally excrement of the gods. These aren't casual metaphors. They're attempts to explain why something so beautiful requires so much pain to possess. Gold became the original proof of work, thousands of years before Bitcoin borrowed the concept. If you had gold, it meant someone, somewhere, had bled for it, and that meant it could be trusted as a store of value in a way that nothing else could. By around 600 BCE, King Alyattes of Lydia, in what's now Western Turkey, took this logic to its endpoint and did something no human had ever done before. He stamped gold into coins of standardized weight and purity. Money, real money, not barter tokens, not shells, not salt, but a universal medium of exchange backed by the one material everyone already agreed was incorruptible. His son Croesus refined the system, and within a generation, the concept had spread across the Mediterranean. Gold went from sacred object to economic infrastructure. The very foundation of trade, empire, and modern civilization rests on a decision made by barefoot humans staring at a glittering riverbed thousands of years before anyone thought to put a price on it. Now, zoom out. Think about the full arc of what just happened across those millennia. Your ancestors faced a world that was constantly decaying, constantly threatening, constantly reminding them that nothing lasts. And then they stumbled on the one material that defied that rule. They couldn't explain it with chemistry. They couldn't explain it with physics, so they explained it with religion, with myth, with stories about gods who sweated sunlight and wept golden tears. They shaped it with bare hands before they ever shaped copper or bronze. They built entire economies around it before they had a word for economy. They sent thousands of people underground into darkness to bring it into the light. And through all of it, through the Neolithic riverbed and the Egyptian mine shaft and the Lydian mint and every gold rush, every conquest, every vault, and every crown, the metal itself never changed. Not once. Not a single atom of corrosion. That was the whole point. Winter came at your ancestors with impermanence as its only weapon. Decay, rust, rot, death. The slow erasure of everything they built and everyone they loved. And they answered it with a soft, heavy, gloriously useless metal that simply refused to disappear. Right now, you're holding a device with gold in its connectors. Thin traces of the same element that a Neolithic human pulled from a Bulgarian riverbed 9,000 years ago. The same element that lined the burial mask of a teenage pharaoh. The same element that made a Lydian king rich enough to become a proverb. It's been melted, shaped, buried, stolen, worshipped, cursed, hoarded, and spent across every civilization that has ever existed on this planet. And it looks exactly the same as the day it was born inside a collapsing star billions of years before the Earth existed, flung across the vacuum of space in a supernova explosion, and stirred into the molten rock of a planet that hadn't cooled yet. Every piece of gold you've ever seen is older than the ground you're standing on,